The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for our webcast on changing the game with enterprise performance management. This town hall is presented by Application Consulting Group, a premier IBM business partner and a specialist in financial performance management. The webcast today is focused on enterprise performance management and is done in partnership with Advanced Disposal Services. I'm very pleased to welcome Matt Morrell and Corey Luther from ADS, who have been a great partner and a truly a visionary and leader in implementing a very effective enterprise performance management system. And I'm really grateful that they found the time to speak with us today, and thank you guys for joining us. So maybe I'll start with Matt. Matt is a VP of Financial Planning and VP of Financial Planning and Analysis at ADS. So Matt, perhaps can I ask you to quick introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Glad to be here. Yeah, like you said, I'm the Vice President of Financial Planning and Analysis for Advanced Disposal. I've been with the company for almost 5 years. Prior to that, I started my career as a CPA auditor for KPMG, was there for 7 years, and then spent most of my career as a corporate controller, working for both private and public entities before transitioning to my role as the head of finance for Advanced Disposal. Was brought on right before the company went public back in 2016. So, yeah, and I'll lead into Corey. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks. My name's Corey Luther. I'm the Financial Systems Manager at ADS, and I joined the company 2 years ago. Prior to that, I had experience working at CVS Health, where I was the operations manager associated with the financial systems there. And previous to that, I also worked with at Fidelity Investments. So I have some experience working with EPMs in the past, and I joined the company and helped transition some of the functions on our EPM.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, guys. So in terms of the session today, we'll focus on really discussing ADS's journey to implement an enterprise performance management system. So we'll touch a little bit on the history and the value that an EPM system provides in general. Discuss the ADS system components and some specific items that they have been able to address as part of the implementation. We'll discuss the differentiation of IBM planning and analysis to serve as an effective APM platform. And Matt and Corey will provide some insight into the key success criteria that they view as being important in implementing an effective platform. So moving along and getting into the meat of things. Maybe, Matt, I can ask you to provide a brief overview of ADS for the viewers. Tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, sure. You said Advanced Disposal. First of all, we're a waste management operator in North America. We're one of the top 5 operators in North America. We're a public company, a little over $1.5 billion in revenue, just to give you a sense of our scope and scale. We've been a very fast-growing company. We went from, in pretty short order, less than 10 years, went from a local operator to a national company. So we had to go through quite the transformation in our operations and in our back-end systems as well. During that time, we grew, like I said, from operating only in a couple states to 16. Now we're in over 16 states, which are organized into 3 main regions. We're largely concentrated in the Southeast, the Mid-Atlantic region of the country, as well as the Midwest. We're very vertically integrated for waste business. I mean, most people are familiar with the collection side of the waste business. We have over 93 hauling companies, but we also operate the disposal side, which is the landfills and transfer stations. We have 40 landfills 73 transfer stations, and several recycling facilities as well. So we're very vertically integrated in the regions that we service. We were recently acquired by Waste Management, recently as in the end of October of this year, 2020, which is the #1 operator in North America. So we've gone through quite the journey over the last several years. Like I said, went from that local operator. We had to adjust to that growth model, you know, where like I said, we were doing things at a very local level, very decentralized way to a way that was to prepare us to go public. And then now, of course, preparing ourselves to be, you know, integrated into a larger organization.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Matt. So speaking of the journey, I know that you guys have been, you know, as you mentioned, you really transformed the organization in terms of how you do business and how you manage yourself in the course of the process. So do you mind giving us a bit of a background on how you went about that and kind of what, you know, what the starting point was and where you ended up?
Yeah, so if I really focus on the last 5 years, that's where we really spent a lot of our time and investment into the enterprise performance management system, which we'll get into here. We do use, of course, IBM Planning Analytics. It's been a fantastic tool for us. It has really transformed our business in more ways than one. But let's just paint a picture for where we started and what we were working with 5 years ago and what we were up against, more or less. We are, yeah, definitely 5 years ago, and still today, we're pretty decentralized organization. I mentioned the 16 states. Although the business is pretty uniform throughout our various regions, we provide those. We're very we allow a lot of autonomy at the local level, which is, we think, a competitive advantage. You can respond to things at a local level if you give your local leadership a lot of autonomy and freedom and space. But stepping back 5 years ago, as we were going through this major growth model through acquisitions and even just organic growth, we were very decentralized and had a very distributed model with no firm standards with regard to reporting, with regard to planning processes. And so, you know, we were at the time looking to go public. Like I said, we did eventually go public in October 2016, but you know, to a CEO, CFO, having to try to go to the street with you know, some predictability on terms of what numbers we were going to be providing for guidance, and then explaining that to the board and to external parties was a daunting task when there wasn't enough standardization in the reporting processes and the planning processes that were available. Also, from a senior management even forgetting the stakeholder side of it, the reporting side of it, from a stakeholder perspective, from a senior management perspective, trying to discern where, you know, winners from losers in terms of what operations are doing well, what operations are not doing well. How do we compare these businesses? How do we know, where we have problems, where we have opportunities? Having that process to come together and consolidate and have that proper conversation and review process was a mess, total mess. Each business had their own way of doing things. They were singing from their own sheet of music. When you had any sort of senior management type meeting, it was almost impossible to make sense of things because everybody came to the meeting with a different version of the report, a different version of the truth, and it was very hard to discern and evaluate and provide any sort of feedback loop on the results. So it was incredibly frustrating in many levels, and it just wasn't working. You know, a lot of what worked back in the past when these businesses were very localized, without any consolidation, you know, they'd use Excel. You know, the process that was at the local level was well understood by 2 or 3 people, but then as a broader organization, it just wasn't working. And so we knew it was important for the scope of the business, and as we're getting ready to go public, to run these things the right way, meaning that we had some level of standardization and consolidation that would work well and allow us to evaluate the business, but at the same time didn't kill the local autonomy and independence. We think that's, like I said earlier, an important part of our strategy is to allow a level of flexibility at the local level. So we wanted to keep that, but then still have the ability to work up and down the organization in a way that we can quickly evaluate and understand what's happening and discern winners from losers. And so we knew we had to make this investment into an enterprise performance management system. And like I said, we'll talk later about why we picked the IBM Planning Analytics version of EPM. But just starting with EPM, Enterprise Performance Management, what was our vision? What makes sense there? And so we knew we had to use EPM to solve some of these problems.
Okay, that's super helpful. So in terms of EPM as an enterprise performance management, I know many companies in this space think about EPM differently, right? For many people, it becomes a financial reporting, financial consolidation tool, maybe some planning and forecasting and all that. I know Matt and Corey, you guys have a very good and unique perspective on EPM, and I personally think that from the people that we speak with, I think you have a very good comprehensive view on the value of the platform that really makes it almost a source of competitive advantage, right? So maybe you can speak a little bit about kind of what your vision is of EPM and what do you think is what makes EPM an important part of the organization?
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, without the right vision, it just falls apart, right? So to us, EPM, to a lot of organizations, as you mentioned, it's just forecasting. It's just a forecasting tool, and that's it. Or it's just a way to consolidate financial information. We see it in a much broader scope. Really, it's the ability to whether you are a local operator, a general manager of a hauling company or a landfill, or you're at a regional level, or you're the CEO or CFO, that you have one place, one desktop, one tool that you can go in and you can see all the important key aspects to running that business. For the waste business, there's a lot of there's certain key pieces, right? You have people, you have safety, you have repairs and maintenance portion, you have transportation costs. You want to be able to see all the aspects that build the fabric of that organization. You want to be able to see it in a summary way, but then also enough detail that you can drill up and down that organization fast and efficiently in one place so that you can drive the performance. You can drive decision making. You can see where you're headed. You can see where you have problems. You can predict where you have issues and then respond to it. And then you can have good conversation and, like I said, feedback loop, not just at the local level for the operator, but then up to the regional level, up to the CEO or CFO or the executive team, and then ultimately provide that information to stakeholders as well. So it's that connected tissue that gets you all the way up and down the organization in a fast, efficient, and effective way. That doesn't spend a lot of time just cobbling through reports or going over there and getting one piece or going over there and getting another piece. It all comes together: planning, actuals, feedback loop. So that's really, in a nutshell, I would say, is what we see as our vision for what makes EPM successful. Because if you have that, you can drive your organization across the levels. You can move fast. You can get ahead of your competitors, and you can respond to problems, in a much more effective way. I don't know, Corey, anything else to add to that? Anything you'd say, that you would say is comprehensive with an EPM in our vision?
Yeah, I think one of the things that as I came on board a couple of years ago, I realized that having an experience working in some of the other platforms that are out there, I realized that the platform in Planning Analytics and within TM1, it was really flexible. It was really something that had been built in a way that was thoughtful from a business perspective. And one of the things that I appreciate most about the systems that we have are the flexibility in allowing us to also, Rob, you mentioned financial reporting, but we've also leveraged TM1 in the EPM to help us with our other statistical reporting, which I know we work closely with the business on, leveraging the hierarchies and the existing infrastructure that we had for financial reporting. we're also allowing the operations to get insight into a lot of the other metrics that are so vital to them. And that was something that, maybe not, I hadn't experienced that as much in other platforms because it might have been a little harder to integrate. But with TM1, it was really easy to build and tie in some of the other data points that allow the business to drive their operations in a really effective way.
Yeah, that's great, and I think for what it's worth, from our perspective as a service provider and somebody who deals with multiple companies in this space as a kind of our course of business, I think what we see a lot is that we talk to companies that really focus on the consolidation and maybe financial reporting or even planning and forecasting at the corporate level, where you basically take a top of the organization and providing a benefit to a small group of users at the corporate level. But the business units really continue doing what they do, either in Excel or in disconnected process. Or you have companies that look at the bottom up and look at the business units, maybe do some streamline, some modeling, but then the aggregation is maybe done differently or somewhere else. And I think kind of where I feel that you guys are unique and you really have done this right is kind of did this top to bottom, right? So not only did you think about consolidation, but you really boiled it down all the way to the bottom of the the operational numbers and really connecting the operations and giving it, to the business unit managers so they can better manage the business, and created a capability of really rolling that up. So any kind of assumption on the business level immediately translates into the financials, which is where I think the value is. And I think that, that's what makes your approach, in my perspective, kind of unique and right, frankly, right? So moving along, in terms of more specifically, so you guys went through your journey and you even implemented a series of models in a progression of kind of, starting at the P&L level and then moving on. So, can you give us, can you walk us through kind of what you did and how you did that?
Yeah, so, we started out 5 years ago. We knew that our forecasting process needed work. It was largely done. Everybody had each local team had their own way of doing it. We really had a hard time, like I said, consolidating the information fast. The forecasts, once they were produced, they were stale because it took so long to do them. It was sort of seen as a corporate function. It wasn't really seen as a value-added process to anyone in the field. So we knew we needed to have to transform not only the efficiency of it from a technology perspective, but also make it a process that is more connected to the business, that the business wants to use, and that the business uses the feedback from the forecasting and budgeting process as part of evaluating throughout the year. And so I think one of the first key steps is, one, we want to make sure we have the right tool, and we'll talk about that further a little bit later. We have, and sorry, sometimes if we say TM1, that's the old terminology. It's really IBM Planning Analytics, but we still use the terminology interchangeably. But IBM Planning Analytics was the right tool for us for many reasons, which, like I said, we'll get into a little bit later. We knew that Excel and was not going to do it for us. Also, we decided that we needed to build a relationship. We need to make sure that this was built with operations front and center. We're in finance. If finance is front and center or corporate's front and center, this is going to just fail right away. So we built a great relationship with our COO and his team, and everything we do, not just this first step, which is standardizing the P&L, but future steps, everything we start with a conversation with our operations folks, our COO and their team. And he pulls in the right people from the field to be part of our team in developing the tools. Because frankly, we don't know the business like they do. They have years and years and years of experience that we will never have. So if we do it on our own without them front and center, we would have built the wrong business plan because we don't know the business like they do. And then even on top of that, having them part of the process front and center, then they feel like they built the tool. which they do. They're just as much a part of the build out of this as we are in finance, right? So it's got to be seen that way. Otherwise, it ends up just being not just seen that way, but it's got to be done that way. Otherwise, it's just seen as some corporate tool that makes corporate feel good, right? No, we want this to be a business tool that drives value. And so that's the starting point for all of our projects. But definitely with standardizing the P&L, we got together with the operations team in a small group, and we developed a really driver-based modeling, right? We wanted to not just have numbers on a page. We wanted to have, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but we really went down to all of our segments of our business and said, what are the 3 or 4 key drivers for each main piece? And we built a driver-based model for multiple reasons. One, we wanted to make sure that people were thinking through the right pieces when they're building this out. It wasn't just being done haphazardly, right? So they're going through it's built in a way that it goes through the right inputs and variables, but it forces people, whether it be, there's a section on sales growth. Well, to get that information, you got to sit down with your sales team and fill out that information, and they have to be part of the process and be accountable to it too. Otherwise, that piece won't work. There's a shop or maintenance component to it. Well, our operations folks have to sit down with their local shop team and fill out those components and so forth. So it really forces a good conversation with all the different aspects of the business and brings everyone into the fold to be able to smart, like I said, modeling component of our forecast. And then fast forward to when you're actually evaluating the business, there's a good feedback loop, because then, okay, well, if you missed the forecast or you missed your budgets, well now you have a good understanding as to why, because you have these detailed drivers and you have all these people that are part of the process, and they can be part of the accountability as well. So there's a good conversation, a better conversation, and a better feedback loop because it's built into our modeling. And planning analytics provides a lot of great flexibility, and we built all that out with ACG. ACG was our partner in the build out. We were able to get it done in about 6 to 8 months, and there was really very little issues. I mean, it was pretty smooth. We were able to get out there, from soup to nuts, get it out there in part of our planning process, because we were under a tight time frame. We were trying to get this done before our IPO process, and we were able to do it successfully and get it up and running with the help of ACG, and along with the key flexibility in the cube nature of planning analytics. So that was step 1, Rob. I'll go into the next step here, but I don't know if you have any questions or any further comments on just the P&L forecasting portion of our build out here.
No, I think that was helpful. That was pretty in depth, right? So I think the key thing you mentioned was really the partnership with operations and really focusing on the business metrics that drive the financials, and being able to implement an integrated model that when you sit down with your sales, with your operations people, and you put in the assumptions, they automatically translate into your financials and then provide full transparency with a drill down to the detail in case you want to analyze variances, right? So that was a fundamental building block, and I think that basically was the foundation of everything else that you have done since then, and it was done right, and it was done properly with the partnership with everybody else. So.
Yeah, exactly, and it really, I think everything we try to do is we want to keep the independence at the local level. We want them to be independent and make decisions that are necessary for their local teams, that are different than maybe for other local teams. But we want to standardize enough of this so that way we can discern winners from losers, right? We can discern where local teams have problems. We don't have to, do all the detailed work at the consolidated level, but we have to have tools that allow us to penetrate and see everything and then move up and down the organization fast. So I think we built it in a way that's allowed us to do that. And then as I transition to the next point here, is capital is the next key point. After we did, like I said, that first year we hit the P&L, and if you're successful in one piece, then the business comes back and says, hey, I got this other problem. Can you solve that too? And that's exactly what happened. We did a pretty good job. We did a great job of solving the P&L portion, and we said, you know what, we're a waste business, and free cash flow is obviously the ultimate measurement for us, right? Well, there's 2 main components of free cash flow. There's EBITDA, earnings, which is a byproduct of the P&L process we just talked about. And then there's capital, right? We have a lot of capital. We have landfills, we have trucks. So capital is also a key component of free cash flow. So we're like, hey, we want to see, we're already evaluating our P&L portion of our enterprise in this tool. It works great. Let's add capital into this so we can see the full free cash flow. So that was the next hurdle we went through here. And as you see, as we add things, it just makes the tool more and more powerful, where the users can see more and more of what drives their organization. And so we added the capital portion, capital budgeting into the fold. This as well used to be done in Excel, and it was actually, the field had a nickname for it. It was called, the process in Excel was called the Beast. And it's because it wasn't a good thing. It was a mess. It was incredibly unreliable. It would fail on them. It required a lot of work and effort, and it was very frustrating for the field. So we transitioned all of our capital planning into planning analytics. Again, we got together with ACG, and we got with our business partners first, of course, and we spec'd it out and got it up and running. And it's our capital can be very complex because there's a lot of different ways we want to look at stuff. We want to look at things by project, at the project level. We want to look at the different categories. They vary quite a bit between landfill, transfer station capital, and the hauling company. They all have very, very different asset types. And so we wanted to have a process that could accommodate all those types of assets that allow us to pull together in an efficient way. We also, with capital, we like to evaluate not just the accrual basis of capital, but also what's important when it comes to free cash flow is that we understand the cash basis aspect of cash flow. So we wanted to have a tool that allowed us to look at both forms, accrual and cash basis. And then, we want to integrate that with our P&L reporting so we could get, like I said, the full view of free cash flow. And that's what we did. It's exactly what we did. And it's been a game changer. It really has. It's changed how we have conversations about capital, how we have those reviews. We have a lot of these key stakeholders, like a lot of our landfill leaders. They ask for these for the reporting, and it really helps them out in so many ways. And so that was just another feather in our cap, was to get to the capital portion. I don't know, Corey, anything else to add? I know you do a lot with these groups too. Anything else to add with capital?
No, I think, having the flexibility within the system, like I said before, to standardize we leveraged the hierarchies that existed in the standardized P&L, and allowed for an easy transition to capital as well. And like you said, being able to tie that all together to get the free cash flow was super helpful. And just one other point to add, working with the users and helping them with training and so forth. One thing about planning analytics that was very helpful is we were able to create a lot of these standard views within each of these cubes that we created, and it really allowed for them to take the information and the data that we're giving them, or the platforms that we're giving them, and easily use the system. So when we work with people out in the field, you have a varying level of sophistication of Excel users. So being able to leverage the functionality to roll these input forms out and standardize reports out using the views that were created in TM1 was super helpful, because a lot of those people weren't necessarily the best Excel users or most expert, and it really allowed for us to roll something out that was easy for them to transition and to use.
Okay. Thank you, guys. And so, just to add from our perspective is that when we work with companies, initially the focus is more on kind of the financial reporting, financial planning and forecasting. I'd say the second, I would say tied for the second topic or area of concern would be either headcount and workforce or capital, depending on the type of business you're in. So, capital being such a huge a part of the company's financials and affecting cash flow and all that. It's definitely something that we see a lot of interest in. And so be able to dissect the capital by project, by category, by type, and then integrate it into financials through depreciation and cash flow is critically important. And again, it's an area where I felt that you guys did the right thing and really got a lot of benefit out of. So moving along, I think the third major topic, and I think Matt, you mentioned this, touched on this a little bit before, was the whole operational metrics, right? So really focusing on not just the financial, but also but the operating metrics on the ground level, and really focusing on kind of what drives the business in a proactive or forward-looking manner, as opposed to looking back at the financials. So. Can you give us some insight into that?
Yeah. So as we evolved here, it went from P&L to capital. The next realm was the operating metrics, and really this is probably in some ways I think been the most exciting phase of our journey, and really a game changer for a lot of our day-to-day field users. Is being able to see. That's just those financials are a lagging indicator. It's the scoreboard, right? But seeing what really trying to get at the health of the business in a more predictive way and in a way that can drive change in behavior so that you can perform better. And so that's really what this next stage is all about. And what's great again about the EPM and planning analytics is, and having a great partner like ACG, is that we were able to build this in a way where we could just, when we were ready to add that next piece, we could just add it. And it wasn't like a redo. It wasn't a redo at all. It was just adding, another cube in a way and connecting that information. And the more you connect, the more powerful that view that I talked about, that vision for EPM, where you can see the business comes together. And so we're just adding new pieces. And so the operating metrics was the next piece. We have just like a lot of organizations, we have a lot of great data. We're capturing data in our operating system that's incredibly useful, but it's just incredibly hard to use, though. I mean, it sounds kind of silly. It's there, but it's hard to get at. It's hard to manipulate. It's hard to use to actually drive decision making. And so, like I said, we work with our operations folks, our CEO. We say, hey, let's start pulling in these operation metrics into our EPM, so we can not only can we see our financial performance against forecasts, we can start pulling in these other concepts as well. And so we started with some productivity measures, and we quickly added, and that was successful. We quickly added other components over time from our operating system, not just on a monthly basis, but on a daily basis. So now folks can go into our tool, and they can look at certain inputs that are also connected to our forecasting process. For example, a lot of our volumes, whether it be tonnage or it be drive-bys for the collection or it be yards, those are all part of those inputs I was talking about in modeling. That's part of our forecasting process. Well, we pulled a lot of those same operating stats daily out of our operating system, and we can compare right now, even in the month of December, for example, how we're performing against our prior forecast or our budget. And you can see if you're doing well, and where you have problems with volumes, and you may have to adjust your routing mid-month, or you have to change your labor around or start times. You can look at that and see up and down the organization, at a consolidated level, at a district level, regional level. It can be done very fast, and it's done daily in our tool. And so that, like I said, that was a game changer for us and part of the growth here. Another thing that we did, our CEO came to us and said, what, we have these senior management type meetings once a month, and they're good, but they're very much focused on the financials, which is good. We got to talk about the financials. That's what we have to talk about to our stakeholders. But we actually want to start that conversation with something more impactful. We want to start that conversation with the things that really drive the health of our business, non-financial related at all. And so with the operations, we developed a scorecard, so to speak, of those things that get at the health of our business. And they're actually on the bullet points here. There's a lot of things we could focus on, but we really wanted only like 4 or 5 different areas to really have that quality discussion at a senior management level that could also be had at a regional level, district level, or BU level. And we said, well, what are those things? One of them is quality of service, right? We have to provide a good service. And we said, well, the key driver there is in terms of the stats that we accumulate are missed pickups. We have a missed pickup, a certain number of missed pickups per drive-by or per volume of routes. That's an indicator. And so we included that. We included safety is a big part of our business, because you have one bad safety incident can kill an operations performance for the whole year. It's that impactful. So we said, let's look at safety claims per route. For productivity, we have to be efficient, right, at what we do. We have to make sure that we are optimizing our routing such that when we collect the garbage, we're doing it as dense as possible. So we looked at our volumes per hour, cubic yards per hour, our drive-bys per hour, hauls, our hours per haul, things of that nature. So that was a key part of this. Our people is a big part. We have it's really hard to find people who drive a truck. It's really hard to find people to repair trucks. So we have to be doing our part as an organization to reduce turnover and to ensure we're training people properly. So we built the right head count, the right types of measurements of turnover and our head count in open positions to make sure we're tracking where we have an issue with our people. And so that scorecard is now done in a way that, it's kind of like a green, yellow, red, and it can be pulled up and we can look at it and compare all of our businesses, whether at the BU level or at the district level or the regional level or consolidated, and we can quickly find, okay, hey, this is where we're doing well. This is where we're really healthy here. Or no, this is where we have opportunities, and we can go across and find where we need to focus. And it's changed the conversation and changed the conversation at a senior management level completely, but also at the local level, it's allowed people to really get at those areas of problem beforehand rather than just waiting till you have a bad P&L. And so we've done that all in planning analytics in a very effective way. I think it's been a total game changer for us. One area where it's even this year, everybody's been impacted by the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, and we have as well. When it really hit back in March, everybody was scrambling to make adjustments, and we use these tools. These tools, we don't want to wait till the end of the month and look at our financials to figure out what was going on. We use these tools that give us a view of our daily operating indicators and stats to see, okay, we knew what parts of the country were being impacted worse than others, right? It wasn't all the same. And in those places, we were able to quickly adjust our routing, adjust our sales approach, adjust our collection process to really, improve and do the best we could with the lower volume we were seeing in some places. And so that was just one example where this allowed us to adapt real time to a changing part of our business and our modeling that was outside of our control. So, Corey, anything else to add here? Corey's been a big part of working with our IT organization as well to pull in the stats we needed from our operating systems. Anything else to add to this development, this latest evolution in our EPM?
I know one thing we talked about before was the flexibility. So I know when I joined the company, Matt had tasked me with doing a lot more work, and we had a basic rudimentary part, the daily stats database, but we really took it to the next level. And one of the things, an example, for instance, we work closely with the HR department at our company to develop a way of tracking headcount stats. So, working with IT, in developing the extract out of or the linkage to TM1, and also working with ACG to create the necessary processes to import the data, we were able to turn a request around in approximately a month, or so, we had a test file that we had created, and we had thought through, how we wanted to represent it in the database and how we wanted to update our reporting structure to incorporate it. And we were able to turn a pretty significant request around in about a month. So it's just one example of where we had a request from the operations that was vital to, in this case, we were tracking headcount for certain people like drivers and technicians. So we had to incorporate that into our reporting that allowed us to leverage, and work with HR to come up with policies and their tracking of how these positions are filled and how it's impacting the business. And we were able to incorporate it with all the other stats that were happening within our database. So that's just one example. We've had a few of those where we've been asked to add something quickly, and with the flexibility of Planning Analytics, we were able to get that in quick fashion. So overall, it's just been a great experience in working with IT and working with ACG as our business partner to build and to quickly leverage the existing infrastructure of the system to adapt as we need to.
Okay, thank you guys. So moving on, you mentioned a few times planning analytics, and I know that you both had experiences with other similar platforms in the past in your previous jobs or previous situations. I wonder if you can help articulate, what do you think makes planning analytics an effective EPM platform, and what are the key differentiators compared to some of the other tools?
Yeah, and Corey will add to what I'm saying here. We both work extensively with other EPMs. I personally worked with, in my prior experiences as a corporate controller, I worked with Hyperion, HFM, and Essbase. I also worked with BPC, which is SAP's version of EPM. And I love, those are good tools, but IBM Planning Analytics is superior for what we're trying to do. It's just, it really, if I were to, it's bullet pointed out here on the slide, it's so much faster than those other tools. I think a lot of it, because it works in memory, it's just faster, and it just scales so well, and it's so flexible. Like I said, all these different components we went through. We went from the P&L to capital to operating metrics. We were able to just add these cubes on. Like I said, we used our business partner ACG to help us, but it's been very flexible to add these different concepts and then integrate them. And as it mentions in there, in the heat of battle, I know, and Corey can expand on this too, that a lot of times you're in the middle of an important planning process or your reporting process, and something comes up because business is changing all the time, you're growing, and you have to adapt something for that. Well, with these other tools, you have to often bring them down and adjust the hierarchies as a batch. You can't just do it on the fly, and because the nature of IBM Planning Analytics, it's in memory. You can make a lot of changes. We make almost all of our changes on the fly, whether it be adding accounts, adding business units, restructuring events, things of that nature can all be done without bringing the system down, and can be done with a lot of ease, which is huge. Consolidations too. We don't have to bring the system down to consolidate. They can be done real time, given the flexible nature of how it's designed. So, I don't know, Corey, you want to add to that?
No, I definitely want to reiterate everything you said. I have experience as well with Hyperion Planning and BPC, and everything is much more flexible and quick. And we do manage a lot of data as well. So TM1, and the IBM Planning Analytics is able to handle the workload with a lot of data. Another example of that is, as we mentioned before, the daily stats. So we're pulling in hourly feeds from our reporting, our metrics reporting databases that's within ADS, and we're also on top of that also scheduling hourly loads from our general ledger system this is all happening during the close process, and we haven't experienced any issues as far as contention or some of the things you might see in Hyperion planning, or things I've experienced before in some of the other systems. It's really been able to handle the workload associated with pulling in feeds from various areas, and also allowing access to the users to do reporting and to do their inputs for forecast cycles. Some of those other systems, as you mentioned before, Matt, you would have some downtime if you had changes or if you had a significant workload going on behind the scenes, and you really don't see that in the IBM Planning Analytics. So yeah, I can definitely agree with that.
Okay. Okay, and I think that brings us to the last page in here, and we spoke about the enterprise performance management platform and kind of your journey. So as I said before, I think that you guys really have done a great job turning this into a very, very effective tool, and really combining a lot of moving pieces into one integrated model. What do you think are the key success criteria that made you successful, and you think that people should follow to reach the same amount of success?
Yeah, Rob, we've talked about some of these already earlier in the presentation, but I think it starts with management buy-in. Like I said, we have a great relationship with the COO and his organization, and in everything we do, he has our full support because he's part of the process with us. His team is part of our team, and so when we go to the group, we go to the field with something, with a solution, we're doing it together. And so it has the full buy-in from the senior management team and from the field because of that relationship and that dynamic. If it was just done by finance in a kind of in an isolated way, it wouldn't have that buy-in. It would be more of a check the box kind of process, and it'd probably end up, like I said, with tools that don't even meet the business's needs, because, like I said, they know so much more about the industry than we do.
Hey Matt, sorry to jump in, but just on that topic. So we see that a lot. I mean, many companies have struggled with the same issue. Sometimes they have siloed operations. Finance wants to do something. Stuff to get the business on board and all that. So what made you guys successful in terms of bridging that gap? Like what, was there anything in particular? Did you have a good, open relationship before then, or how did you kind of break through the silos and get everybody to the table?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with trying to explain to them what the advantages are. Trying to really explain that, EPM, you have to sell. I should say sell them, because it sells itself. But it's trying. To some people, EPM is a foreign concept, right? So first of all, explaining how EPM, if they provide the level of input and investment with you, can make it so much easier for them to use. So it's really painting that picture. I know later in the slide here it says selecting the right tool. You don't want to pick up garbage with a golf cart. I use that term all the time because oftentimes people think, oh, you could just use the ERP, right? Which is a transactional system to do all this reporting and consolidation. It's not designed for that. It's designed for transactions, right? You have these operating systems that are designed to handle transactions. They're not designed to pull in reporting from various sources, right? Like an OLAP database type EPM can do. And so it's just trying to explain that there's an advantage to using an EPM to bring everything together. And hey, if you do this with me, we will provide this view into your business that's going to be so easy to get at, and you can drive it. And you can drive it without creating a lot of problems in your local teams. They're going to want to use it too. And so it starts with really sharing that vision with the right people in the organization so that they buy into it and they buy into the process, I think is number one. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was great. Thank you.
And then, other things that are important to us that we've seen is it says here, agree on the right operating model. And what that means is, sometimes there's a confusion, I think, in organizations that Corey and I have been involved with, that this should be owned by IT. and IT definitely plays a role for sure. But we found that it's better to be, the tool is, the EPM itself is better to be owned by finance and operations. And that's not a knock on IT. We just think that finance is usually in a good spot to work with operations to really manage the tool, because they both understand the financial outputs of what are being used by stakeholders and the inputs, right, from the accounting ledger and sales and the general ledgers, as well as working with operations to build out the metrics the right way. So I think they're better. It's better for them to own it, the day-to-day usage of it, and the adaptations that are needed on a real-time basis to meet the business needs, and then use IT where IT is needed. They should definitely play a role, whether it be with regard to security, whether it be with regard to of course, the server environment or the cloud-based environment connectivity that you might be using. But the day-to-day application management should be done, we think, it's best done within finance directly with operations as well. So, I think that's a key part. And then related to that is working with the right partner. EPMs, they're game changers. Like I said, you wouldn't want to pick up garbage with a golf cart. You want to pick it up with a solid truck, right? So for us, we're using planning analytics. We know that's the right technology, but these things, these tools, and planning analytics they're all these tools, whether all EPMs, but planning analytics as well. You want to have a quality partner to try to build in-house all the right technical understanding of the tool is, in my opinion, impossible unless you just have a huge staff, right? We need to, we're thinly staffed. We try to be efficient. We will never build out those expertise to match the type of expertise we get out of ACG. And they're a great partner. We have a managed support arrangement with them, and they're just part of our team. They really are. We have we have meetings once every 2 weeks for a half an hour just to talk about what we're working on. And they come in and a lot of times it's just steady Eddie stuff, right? But when you come into it, having that relationship with them and that connection with them, throughout the year and throughout periods of just pure maintenance, when something comes up that's too technical for us to really handle on our own, they're there. They know our environment, they know our business, and they can help us out. But then, also we want to learn something. We don't have that expertise. We can go to our partners at ACG and they can help us through it. And they help make sure that there's so many times as we've been building this out that if we did this without their help, we would have boxed ourselves into a corner to a point that the tool wouldn't be able to expand or be used in other ways. And so they help us really make sure that we're considering the long-term objectives to ensure that the tool is maintained properly and can be flexibly used going forward without, like I said, we probably would have gummed up the works a long time ago if we didn't have that level of expertise. So finding the right partner to help with that support element is key as well. I don't know, Corey, anything else to add here to what was successful for us?
Yeah, I think one other thing, I like to give examples, but another good example of our relationship with ACG and, how the system really, worked out really well was we recently went through an upgrade of planning analytics. And I know I've been a part of other upgrades and other systems before and some prior experience. But we put a plan together, and this gets to Matt's point about, having the ownership within the business and finance and operations. We were able to work with ACG, and we basically implemented the upgrade, which was pretty substantial. That includes training and testing and everything that is involved in an upgrade. And we were able to get through it in about 2 months, which is amazing. In my past experience, a lot of these upgrades had taken 6 months to a year almost sometimes. And, a lot of that had to do with the fact that, we work closely with ACG. They understand our needs. They understand our timelines. And, we had experience as well on our side, but ultimately the system was flexible enough to allow us to do a lot of this testing without impacting the day-to-day production, and we're able to do it very quickly. We'll be able to load data into the system to test it, and it only takes a couple hours versus maybe a day or two in some other instances with other systems. So it's just another example of how, like Matt said, picking the right partner and also picking the right system and operating model really helped us a lot in using the system in our experience.
All right, thank you very much, guys. I definitely appreciate the kind words, and I can tell you from our perspective is that I think this was and it continues to be a very good partnership, and it's easy for us to work with companies like you and people like yourselves when it's the right vision, it's the right model, it's the right structure, and all that, and it just makes things much simpler. So we definitely appreciate your support and partnership. So wrapping up here, I think that about concludes the presentation. I have one follow-up question here as part of Q&A. So Matt, you mentioned that you just recently concluded a merger, an acquisition by Waste Management. So in terms of your ability to integrate and kind of manage the transition, how would you rank the effectiveness of the system you have to be able to manage the transition in an effective manner?
Yeah, it's been incredibly helpful because as Waste Management came in, they have, although they're a similar business, right? They're a waste management business just like we are. They have a different P&L structure. We have different business groupings where we would report underneath them in a different way than we report naturally in our current environment. And we were able to use the dynamic nature of planning analytics to quickly adapt our reporting environment so that day one, as soon as we close, we were able to provide Waste Management, here's a view of our operations as we fit into you. And here's a P&L in your format. And our users could provide that too and have conversations and connect, and they can quickly connect between the two. They can go and say, okay, here's how I go from my legacy environment, ADSW, to how we fit into Waste Management, and have that conversation pretty easily on day one. And there's no way that we could do that in the ERP or do that through other tools. So it's incredibly useful. And I know Waste Management really appreciates it too. And their leadership team appreciates it as well. So that's one. I think related to that, on the flip side, we were an acquirer, right? Of course, that's how we grew our business in many ways. We were able to tuck in these new businesses throughout the year, and I didn't talk about it earlier in our evolution, but we built out, as part of our reporting platform, dimensionality. Working with ACG, it was in pretty quick order. We were able to layer in what we call pro forma, as if. Pro forma is as if that acquisition always existed, so we could layer in and do comparisons of our current operations to prior periods with that pro forma information and compare year over year on the same basis. And people could toggle between a pro forma view and a non-pro forma view very, very efficiently in planning analytics. And so our business users got a lot out of that, and we were able to use it quite a bit in our performance management at a senior management level as well.
Okay. So I think with that I'd like to conclude this webcast. So Matt and Corey, thank you so very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I know you guys are busy. I know it's December. It's month end. It's there's a lot going on. It's a tough economic environment. So I know you have your hands full. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself. I'm going to follow it's info@acgi.com, or go to our website. You can call us. Happy to discuss or follow up with any specific questions. And unless anything else, Matt and Corey, thank you very much again, and everybody have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.